I want you to picture this for a second. The sun is setting over Sydney's famous Bondi Beach. It's been 1 week since a terrible terror attack, and a whole community has come together for what's supposed to be a moment of national unity, a time for quiet reflection, for shared grief. But what happened next? Well, it was anything but quiet. Right in the middle of this incredibly solemn gathering, that accusation just cuts through the air, and it's aimed at one man, Australia's Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. In an instant, a moment of mourning gets completely shattered by this raw, public anger. And that right there, that's the big question we're going to dig into. How on earth did a memorial for terror victims become the scene for such a heated political clash? To figure that out, we really have to look at what's bubbling just under the surface. All the grief, the fear, and the frustration in this community.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. You see, it was a tale of two leaders. On one hand, you had Prime Minister Albanese getting booed, but on the other, the state leader, NSW Premier Chris Minns, was actually being praised as an exemplary leader. Why? Well, he got up there and admitted the government had made mistakes. The crowd embraced him. This tells you the anger wasn't just random. No, it was specific. It was complicated. And to really get to the bottom of it, we have to go back to the day it all began.
So to really understand the pain on that beach, we need to rewind the clock exactly 1 week. Before the tragedy, the community was gathered for a celebration. You know, a moment of real joy. What should have been a beautiful celebration of Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, turned into an absolute nightmare. 2 gunmen opened fire on the crowd, and just like that, the peace of the festival, and really the feeling of safety for a whole community, was just shattered. 15 people lost their lives. Just let that number sit for a second. 15 people who were there to celebrate were killed in this brutal attack. And these weren't just statistics, you know? We're talking about a 10-year-old girl named Matilda, a rabbi who was born in Britain, and even a Holocaust survivor. Every single loss was a whole world of stories, just tragically cut short. Okay, so let's go back to the memorial itself, because despite that anger we saw at the start, this event was also this incredibly powerful display of a community's strength. It was them defiantly coming together, even after everything. So at 6:47 p.m., exactly 1 week to the minute after the first shots were fired, the entire beach just fell silent. Then came these powerful speeches and tributes. People released bee balloons for little Matilda. The whole crowd sang Waltzing Matilda for her. And the night ended with the lighting of the menorah, a beautiful symbol of light pushing back the darkness. And in the middle of all this heartache, this unbelievable story of bravery comes to light. The crowd started chanting the name Chaya. She's a 14-year-old who, even after being shot herself, used her body to shield younger kids from the gunfire. She became this living, breathing symbol of resilience. And get this, standing there on crutches, Chaya spoke to the whole nation with this simple but incredibly powerful message. She wasn't calling for revenge. She was calling for people to be kind, to be brave. Just a truly amazing moment. So if the community could come together with such unity and strength, we have to go back to our main question. Where did all that anger at the Prime Minister come from? Well, it turns out it wasn't just about the attack itself. It was about everything that had been happening for months before it. Here's the crucial context. For Australia's Jewish community, this horrific attack felt like, and this is a quote, a shock, but not a surprise. Why? Because it came after a huge spike in anti-Semitic attacks across the country since October 7th, 2023. It created this climate of fear, a feeling that they just weren't being protected. So you can really break down that frustration into 4 key things. First, that documented rise in anti-Semitism that just left the community feeling terrified and vulnerable. Second, this widespread feeling that the government should have done more to protect them. Third was a big foreign policy move, the government's decision to recognize a Palestinian state. And finally, you had sharp criticism from overseas, with Israel's prime minister accusing the government of doing nothing to stop the spread of anti-Semitism. It was a perfect storm, really. So in the face of this terrible tragedy and all of this anger, how did the Australian government officially respond? Let's take a look at the actual steps they've taken. Well, first things first, the wheels of justice are moving. A 24-year-old suspect has been identified and charged with 15 counts of murder and 1 count of committing a terrorist act. So that's the immediate legal response. And on the policy side, Prime Minister Albanese announced some pretty big changes. We're talking about a crackdown on hate speech and incitement to violence, a full-scale review of the country's police and intelligence agencies, and a nationwide gun buyback program, the largest since the massive reforms after the Port Arthur massacre. So these are moves designed to tackle both the ideology and the weapons behind the attack. And all of this brings us to the fundamental challenge that was laid bare on that beach. The Bondi Memorial was a story of two things happening at the exact same time: incredible community resilience and really deep political division. And it leaves us with this massive question, not just for Australia, but for a lot of countries right now. Because, it's one thing to say you're united against hate. It's a whole other challenge to actually do it when your own house feels so deeply divided.